you. You will now be placed in the queue.
It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. I am your host this morning, and I appreciate your joining with us. Thanks very much for logging on. Boy, have we got a mess in our, well, I want to say foreign policy, but we really don't have a foreign policy at this point in our history in America. For the first time ever, we actually don't really have a foreign policy. And we have a group of failures that you can attribute to the lack of a policy, including our own border. We're going to talk a little bit about that this morning because this crisis on the border is completely and totally out of control. Everyone recognizes it. No one is willing to step up and do what's necessary. If you'd like to participate in our program this morning, you're certainly welcome to. You can call 573-453-5505. We're going to cover 4 topics this morning. First will be border chaos. Now, the White House and the DHS say it's nobody's fault. In fact, DHS came out and said it's not the president's fault. Well, whose fault is it then? Because you can't have a scenario like this, which has been created for political purposes, and not have someone be responsible for it. Now, the simple fact is that every time we turn around, we hear this president tell us that he just learned about it in the papers, he didn't know about it, he was unaware. If you're going to try and tell me the same thing about border, when he's the same one who's been passing illegally, I might add, all of these executive actions to force the border crossings to be expanded based upon his policies, then I got to tell you that then you are willing to believe virtually anything. You have drunk the Kool-Aid, so to speak. Our second topic will be a border agent who tells us that the immigrant flood is orchestrated. Orchestrated. That's his words. So who to believe? We're also going to actually take a look at a letter from a current border agent. So the truth is, the people on the ground are telling us everything we need to know. It's the people in the White House, one, who haven't been on the border or haven't even been within, 100 miles of the border, who are going to sit there and lie to us right to our faces and tell us, hey, it's just the way things are. Hey, I tell you what, listen, the papers down in South America are openly telling parents, if your kids go up there, they'll get to play ball, they're advertising it and the failure of the border like as if it's a summer camp. They're going to be taught English, they're going to get food and health care, they'll be put through school, and they'll get to stay. That's the advertisement in the papers, folks. What do you think is generating that? I mean, it's not just happening on its own. Stuff like this doesn't happen on its own. Our third topic, the meltdown in Iraq. And I got to tell you, if you've been paying attention now, 3 major cities in Iraq have collapsed in the last matter of days. And they are literally, 50 miles or whatever it is, whatever the distance is from Fallujah to Baghdad, away from actually being able to capture Baghdad. The caliphate that has been the hallmark of all of these terrorists, and I don't care, I don't want to hear the distinction between core Al-Qaeda an off-branch or offshoot al-Qaeda. That's White House doublespeak. The truth is terrorism, and it makes no difference whether you are al-Qaeda or son of al-Qaeda. The truth of the matter is they are building a centralized caliphate in the failed states of Syria and Iran, and shortly Afghanistan, as soon as we pull out of there. And here's the problem. One of their ultimate goals is Pakistan, and I'll tell you why. Pakistan has nuclear weapons. It's not hard to figure out, folks. Pakistan has nuclear weapons. Let me say it again. Pakistan has nuclear weapons. And Pakistan is already on the verge of falling. They are so divided and split that they are already half in the bag for the insurgencies, and they're assisting. They let the Taliban openly cross the border to seek refuge in Pakistan, while simultaneously they run back across the border in Afghanistan, do their damage, and then hide behind the border again back in Pakistan. And they do it with the government's knowledge. And then when the government gets attacked, they say, hey, can we have some help over here? But when it comes time for us to preeminently attack them, then they don't want it. Because there are Taliban and there are Islamic Caliphate sympathizers in the Pakistani government. Now, you can say, hey, come on, it's not a big deal. That's over there in Iraq. It's far away from us. It's over there in Syria. It's far away from us. It's over there in Afghanistan. It's far away from us. And Pakistan isn't anywhere near us either. But I got to tell you, folks, the idea that they can gain access to nuclear weaponry, and this crew of all people, let me tell you something. The fact that they have access to nuclear weaponry should terrify the most liberal, progressive, weeping, tear-laden humanitarian blubberer. Our fourth topic. The IMF is warning on a global housing collapse. And I apologize. I put it up as our feed for today's segment, and I put wants instead of warns. And that was my mistake. The IMF warns on a global housing collapse. Now, if you are foolish enough to believe that, hey, that's not going to interfere with us, we're here in the United States, then you're not paying attention to what's going on around you in the world. Because our currency is already under onslaught by the Russians and the Chinese and the BRICS countries. But beyond that, our economy is tied to their economies. And when they go down, they will drag us down. Just as if we go down, we will drag them down. So let's understand, and let's get over to Mr. Johnson and hear what he has to say, because he's the chief of Homeland Security. I mean, this is his bailiwick after all, right? This is his area of expertise, his area of specialty. This is his job. He says in both public and private meetings that the border is a problem and it needs fixing. But he limits that by saying, but wait a minute, it's not President Obama's fault. How can it not be President Obama's fault? How can it not be? See, this guy has passed, and I don't want to say passed because that gives it the illusion of credibility. And if there's one thing that Barack Obama does not have, it's credibility. Saying that he's passed something, first of all, flies in the face of our constitutional system. You cannot pass something as a president. You can only sign a law passed by Congress. But he is utilizing executive action and operating in a dictatorial manner, which he's been doing now across the board on everything. And the simple truth is, and I've said this before, you've heard me say it 100 times, I'm going to say it again. Congress is sitting there impotent as a eunuch. They have utterly, absolutely failed. Do you know why Cantor lost his primary race the other day? Not only because of the immigration issue. They're angry about that, but that's really not the real reason. The real reason is because Americans across the board see utter, absolute, abject failure in everything that this administration and this Congress on both sides of the aisle have done or not done. That's the real issue, because they haven't done a darn thing. All they do is sit and fiddle while Rome burns. The president is operating as if this was some kind of a banana republic, and nobody cares. I mean, look, ladies and gentlemen, a Congress that was worth its salt would be demanding some sort of an external, and here's the problem: they can't get around the Department of Justice, or at least they think they can't. Well, that's fine. Then both sides of Congress, and this includes the Democrats. I got to tell you, you Democrats out there who support what's going on right now, what you are doing is tantamount to an act of treason against your own nation. Because in your fervency to support this man, irrespective of the outcome, irrespective of the consequences, you are setting our nation up for a complete and utter failed state. No different than Iraq. No different than Greece. No different than the Ukraine. You see, you're placing us in a position where you're allowing a president to do what you would be screaming bloody murder if this was a Republican president. And that tells me that you don't have the sense of justice you wear around like a badge of honor. Because the truth is, this is not justice. This is lawlessness, this is thuggery, this is oligarchy, and it is treason. A president does not have unilateral authority to act without Congress and act without the judiciary. And if you don't recognize that, see that, if you want proof of someone who does, go look at Jonathan Turley. He's in your camp, but at least he's willing to stand up and say, you know what? This guy is way off base. He is completely, totally, and utterly outside the boundaries of his presidential authority. Those of you who are unwilling to stand up and do what needs to be done in reference to removing this president, those of you who are Democrats in Congress, who are standing there sycophantically just following the lead of the penguin in front of you, there is no forgiveness for you. Because what you're allowing to happen is the complete and utter destruction of our system. And when this guy's done, the next person, or the person after that, or the person after that, will continue with these policies. If you think, look, personally, let me just talk to the liberals for a moment, because the truth is, I don't think we're going to get to 2016. I think we are going to see a fiscal collapse cooperating with some sort of an engineered excuse for a martial law. I believe that. I truly do. Before 2016 strikes. I really do. And I'm going to hold you personally accountable. And the reason I am is because you know where this will lead. But you're going to stand there and not step out of line, whether for fear of your job, whether for fear of your family, whether for fear of your reputation. Maybe it's because you cannot stand up and say, I was wrong about this guy. Maybe because you don't have the courage to stand up in the face of all the other sycophants on either side of you and say, you know what, guys, this is wrong, and I'm not going to stand here and listen to it anymore. Some one of us has to step up and say, this guy's got to go. Those of you who are unwilling to do that, and it doesn't matter what your reasoning is, it doesn't matter what kind of justification or rationale you've given yourself to allow this to go on, I'm telling you right now that what this president is doing is going to have reverberations. If you think that this is going to continue on, that the United States of America, as we know it, and the Congress and the House and the Senate and the presidency and the Justice Department is going to continue on for another 200 years, you are setting the stage now for the complete, total, and utter collapse of the United States of America. You are, in fact, guaranteeing that it will not be continuing for another 200 years. Because let's just play the tape out to the end. Let's assume another Republican does get into office as a president, you have given that Republican, some right-wing extremist Republican who gets in, all the power they need to completely, totally, and utterly decimate you, your entire party, and the nation. To subjugate us under the iron fist of those crazy right-wing extremists. Have you not? You have allowed the precedent to be laid. You have allowed the situation to get so out of control, for all the examples to be drawn, that any person who is a danger to what you believe in has all the tools at their disposal, has every weapon, every magazine fully loaded to completely and utterly decimate you and your belief system. You thought Nixon was using government as a weapon. And yet, and you were outraged. You thought Bush was using government as a weapon, and you were outraged. Now your man is using government as a weapon, with your assistance, with your genuflection, with your blessing. How can you be so two-faced? How can you be so oblivious to your own destruction, to your own corruption? It's incomprehensible to me. You cannot sit here and tell me that this border chaos is no one's fault. Jay Johnson has unmitigated gall to make a statement like that. It's incomprehensible. And here's the truth. Folks, both sides of the aisle, liberals, progressives, Democrats, Republicans, Tea Partiers, right-wing extremists, I don't care who you are. I don't care how you label yourself, patriots. The evidence that's going on here is incontrovertible. No one, listen, I am no legal expert. And I guarantee you, in a court of law with a jury, I could convict Barack Obama of treason. In fact, I've done so on this radio show, 50 times. Utilizing our own Constitution and his own words and his own actions, I could convict Barack Obama of treason. The simple truth is, the fact that there's not a single attorney in this nation who stood up and fought against this, figured out some way to create a citizen's call. Listen, if the law doesn't exist, then you better create one. If this was Europe, do you know what they do in Europe? They would hold what's called a no-confidence vote. And I've spoken about that. In fact, I talked about it as somebody who wrote an article, a book about it called Calling for a No-Confidence Vote. It was General Vallely. Calling for a no-confidence vote. What they do in Europe is they would say, our prime minister or our, whoever is the target of it, has a no-confidence vote. That means that person is literally, effectively, either out of power or they have to bring in enough people to shore up their positioning so that they can turn around and say, okay, we've brought in enough opposition members that will counsel and participate in our government format so that we can restore your confidence. Now, we don't have a system that allows for that. We just have elections because our terms are fixed. I mean, honestly, who in the United States of America right now, do you think if the United States of America, or even let's just narrow it down to Nevada, gave Harry Reid a vote, do you think he'd win a no-confidence vote? Please. Do you think Barack Obama could handle a no-confidence vote? No, he couldn't, and I'll tell you why. Just the polls that you see out there, although slanted and twisted and abused, the American people are fed up. They're tired of this, and they are tired of him. And they're tired of everybody, including Jay Johnson and Valerie Jarrett and all of these people who run around there and yes this guy to death or participate. Because don't forget, these people are pushing their own personal agendas as well. The simple truth is, we have gotten to the stage in the United States of America where I believe that the cleft, the chasm between people who are willing to fight for their country and those who either don't care or are willing to allow it to go down as long as they personally benefit for whatever reason, whether it's financial, political, power, makes no difference. And that's the difference between what's happened in our society over the past 100 years. There has been a subsection, a subculture, if you will, of individuals who are more interested in their own personal situation and their own personal growth than they are about what's right for the nation. And that's a tragedy, because that means that we have a significant chunk of people in the United States of America that are interested in, willing to, and have already committed treason against their nation and treason against themselves. Because ultimately, you can't expect that all the pawns in the game are going to make it through to the end. Don't believe me? Look back at any nation that's gone through that turn. Look at the revolution in Russia in 1917. They used people to make it seem like it was a war of the people, and then they killed them off. They did the same thing in Nazi Germany. They did the same thing under Chairman Mao. Totalitarianisms do that, period. And you see, you're actually fighting to raise your own executioner upon a pedestal. And I promise you, at the rate we're heading, you're guaranteeing that's the path we'll take. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to tackle this issue of two border agents. I'm going to read you some information from both of them. One is retired, so he can speak out and say whatever he wants. The other's active. But I got to tell you, it's going to set off a light in your eyes and your mind about what's going on. Make sure that you visit our friends over at American Resume Service at AmericanResumeService.com, 417-264-2486, and info@AmericanResumeService.com. They have a great program out there. Normally their services are $200. For anyone from America's Voice Now that contacts them, they will give you a 50% discount. So it'll cost you $100 to have your resume either created or recreated, depending upon whether you have one or partial one, and they'll rebuild it or start one from scratch. And they will gear it and set it up. There's a number of different formats for resumes. Let them work with you. You'll be amazed at the results. And at the same point in time, you'll also be supporting America's Voice Now, because you'll be paying $100 for $200 worth of service, and at the same point in time, they will donate that whole $100 to AVN. Hey, that's a win-win for everybody. Make sure that you see our friends over at Battery Station, batterystation.com, one of our longest and most honored supporters. Battery Station provides services for all kinds of batteries and electronic products. They have literally hundreds of flashlights and products from companies such as Gerber, products from Hellfire Systems, products from all these different Pelican cases, Otter cases, all kinds of things. Make sure that you ask Kevin when you get a hold of him over there about their Otter case special. They've got these 3 Otter cases that they sell in a little stack. Unbelievable deal. I'm telling you, it's half the cost of what it should cost you. We'll be right back. You're listening to America's Voice Now.